Hello and welcome to another video tutorial on sketching and this time rendering. What we're looking at in this tutorial is adding color or adding shading to add contour to an object. Some examples of which we have here. Things like cars, things like guns, more cars. In these videos we'll look at basic sketching techniques with a pencil to add shading, and then we'll move into marker rendering such as these. It's very important to understand that rendering is not the same thing as colouring in. Rendering is designed to make something look three-dimensional by adding contour. The way we achieve this with any object is to show light, dark and in-between areas on it. So starting with a simple cube. It's drawn in 3D, but to make it truly look 3D, we need to decide where we have a light source from. A good starting light source is generally the top left, if you're unsure. So our light will be coming from the top left down towards the cube. We just follow as logic would state from real life, which means what's facing up towards the light is going to be the lightest. What faces away from the light will be the darkest, and then we have an area in between, so medium shading, and we'll just demonstrate that now. So fairly dark for our side of the cube in the shade, half as much for our one in between, and then we'll leave our top one very light. You can see already that this cube looks a lot more 3D from this shading. We can add complexity to this cube, make other 3D shapes, which we'll do now, and the same technique will always apply. So once again we have our areas facing up, this one and this one, which are light. We have our areas facing away from the light, this one and this one. And then we have our in-between areas here and here. So we'll shade them very quickly. So darkest, all of the surfaces facing away from the light. Now our in-between ones. And we'll leave the other ones light. And once again we have a very quick, very easy 3D effect. This applies to any object. When we have round surfaces, such as a cylinder, it gets a little bit trickier, but not too much. Our top surface will be very light because it's facing upwards, but our side surfaces are going to be our darkest points. What we're looking for is to have dark on one edge, dark on the other edge, but then light in between. And the whole key to doing this is to making the light to dark change as smoothly as possible. So dark right on the edge, and we're fading it in, pressing less and less until it's getting lighter in the middle. Same from this side. Just a little bit of shading on top. So dark on the edges of anything round, blending into light on the inside. When you're doing blending, don't be afraid to use your finger. Just smudge it and it'll help become a little bit smoother. One more example of this might be to do a cone. It works exactly the same way because it has a round surface. Dark on the edge, dark on this edge, bit of blending, and all of a sudden it looks quite three-dimensional. This basic technique works for a lot of objects. Here we have two examples of wood. They both use the same principle. This plank with the flat sides has a lighter shade on top a medium shade, and then a darker shade on the edge. They've just been shaded in with pencil, and then some random lines for grain added after that. Our log follows a cylinder principle, where we have really dark on each edge, fading into light, and a nice even colour on top. And then once again, just adding in some random wood features to achieve the desired effect. One further step we can take to make these look even more realistic is to add a shadow. If our light source is coming from the top, that means our object will cast a shadow to the other side. It's always going to come from the base edge, and it's going to follow a similar shape. Shadows is a little bit harder to work out. You can be quite systematic with it if you want to take the time. But as long as it's not too far off, doing it very quick and rough will still achieve the desired effect. We'll do on with this. The light's coming from here, therefore it's going to cast a shadow in this direction. And so forth. Each time the shadow is going to come out from the edges. So from this front edge here, and remember there's a back edge to this cube, so it's going to come from there and then follow the shape of the top, which is a point. On this one, it's going to come smoothly out from each tangent into a point. So try some of these exercises doing simple shapes, and once you feel comfortable you can move on to something more complicated.